Hello and welcome. My name is Barbara Samolenko from Visit Victoria, and I'll give you a quick tour today of Melbourne and Victoria. There are many highlights in store for those deciding to holiday here. Melbourne was named the most livable city 7 years in a row, for example, and Victoria is home to the Great Ocean Road, often called the most scenic coastal drive on earth. But first, let's look at some basics. Victoria is roughly the size of the UK, and it sits in a Mediterranean climate zone with mild winters and warm summers. Melbourne is our capital, and it's one of the key gateways to Australia, with many great connections from the UK and Ireland. Victoria is also the wildlife in the wild state. You're almost guaranteed to see some of the iconic wildlife in the wild here, and I'll say a bit more about that, why that is later. And we have some unique Aboriginal heritage, including our urban Aboriginal experiences, as well as Butchbim. And again, a bit more about that later. But Victoria is a paradise for self-drive holidays, and that's whether you explore by car or by camper van. That's because distances are relatively short here, and the scenery is really beautiful and changes very quickly. In fact, we have the highest diversity of landscapes across Australia. Per day, visitors will probably spend 2 to 4 hours in the car, and that means that you've got the rest of the time to be out and about to have an adventure, stop or just relax. And those visitors who are a bit more nervous about heading into the wilderness can feel pretty safe here because most of our driving is on-road versus off-road. And one of the best things in Victoria is the wildlife. In Victoria, you'll find about 30% of Australia's species on just 3% of the continent's landmass. Now, this equation helps explain why it's so easy to see the iconic wildlife in the wild here. There are many places where you're almost guaranteed to see koalas, kangaroos, wombats, penguins, emus, or even platypus. So it's a great way to explore. There are 4 key touring routes that visitors can follow to explore Melbourne and Victoria, or you can mix and match, and I'll go into each one in detail. But first, every exploration, of course, starts with Melbourne. It's a city that's really famous for its colourful laneways and street art, but also, of course, its creative restaurants and rooftop bars. So let's explore. A great way to delve right into the culture of Australia is to explore Melbourne's Aboriginal heritage. This is distinct, and because there are many sites to see here right in the heart of the city, we call it urban Aboriginal. Visitors can do a tour with the Koori Heritage Trust to discover those sites right in the heart of the city. They can then follow this up with an Aboriginal heritage walk in the Royal Botanic Garden to learn about the flora and fauna and traditional uses of plants. And then they can try some Indigenous dishes at Mabu Mabu Big Esso on Federation Square, which is a new Indigenous restaurant right in the heart of Melbourne. And Melbourne is also really famous as the sporting capital of Australia, so there's always something going on. January kicks off with the tennis at the Australian Open, and then usually in March, although this year in April, we'll have the Formula One Grand Prix. In November, there is the Melbourne Cup horse race, and then there is, of course, cricket at the MCG, the Melbourne Cricket Ground, which holds 100,000 people. There's always something going on, so before you send your guests out on the trip to Melbourne and Victoria, check the events calendar and let them know what they can experience. And then we've got some really great places to stay. And I've flagged some of the new ones here. Opening this September, we'll have the Ritz-Carlton with its reception on the 80th floor. It's going to have quite a lot of panoramic views and wow power when people check in. Then we've also got the Mövenpick on Spencer, which is a new and great place for people to stay fairly centrally. We've got the 5-star Marriott Docklands in the Docklands area with Australia's highest infinity pool. And you've got United Places Botanic Gardens, a luxurious boutique hotel with particularly strong sustainability credentials, also relatively new. So now let's head outside Melbourne and let's explore the Go Beyond Melbourne regions and areas. These are 4 beautiful and very different areas that surround Melbourne, and they are comprised of the 2 peninsulas, the Bellarine and the Mornington Peninsula, as well as the Yarra Valley and Phillip Island. And we're moving around in about a 90-minute to 2-hour drive time radius of Melbourne here. Now, Phillip Island, many of you will know, it's world famous for the penguin parade, where you can get close to hundreds of penguins that waddle ashore every evening. In the Yarra Valley, you can explore the beautiful rainforest with a 100-year-old Puffing Billy steam train, or you can glide over the really famous vineyards of the regions in a hot air balloon. On the Mornington Peninsula, you can jump into the geothermal hot springs of the Peninsula Hot Springs and take a really good soak and relax. And from either peninsula, the Bellarine Peninsula or Mornington Peninsula, you can jump into the water and go snorkeling with wild seals and dolphins. And here is one of those much loved products in the Yarra Valley. It's the Puffing Billy Railway, and they have a new visitor centre, the Lakeside Visitor Centre. It's just opened and it's quite state of the art. Also new at Puffing Billy is that they now have bicycle hire, which means you can train one way and cycle back through the lush rainforest, for example. Also, what's back at Puffing Billy is the much loved sitting on the windowsills, which you can see on the picture here, where you can sit on the windowsill of the train and let your legs dangle on the outside of the train. And here is another new product. This one's based in the Mornington Peninsula. We're talking about Wild Adventures Melbourne, who offer stand-up paddleboarding, bushwalking or cycle tours that get you close to the nature and the wildlife immediately surrounding Melbourne. They are also a very sustainable operator. And then we're heading to the Great Southern Touring Route. This is one of those absolute must-do routes in all of Australia. Here you will find the Great Ocean Road with the iconic 12 Apostles, but you'll also find the incredible Grampians with their huge eucalyptus forests and Aboriginal rock art. And of course, you'll find the Otway National Park, which is one of those places where you're almost guaranteed to see a koala in the wild. We're going to hear a little bit more about the Great Southern Touring Route from Ina, so I won't say too much, but I wanted to introduce Wildlife Wonders to you, which opened in February last year. It's a not-for-profit wildlife conservation attraction, and it's absolutely beautifully created and already made it as National Geographic's Best of 2022. What's unique here is that you will have wildlife encounters as if in the wild, and with iconic species like koalas and kangaroos, but also some of the species you'd have to be very lucky to see in the wild, such as potoroos and quolls. It's a lovely place to visit. Budj Bim is a site I've mentioned earlier on. It's a very significant site of Aboriginal culture. In fact, it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site dedicated to Aboriginal culture. It will open in 2022. It's the world's largest and first known example of aquaculture. Over 6,000 years ago, Aborigines carved stone channels into the volcanic lava flows of the area here to breed fish. And there's also stone dwellings nearby that confirm that not all Aboriginals lived as nomads. So it's a very significant site. Also new is the Grampians Peaks Trail, a 100-mile-long distance hiking trail, 12 nights, 13 days. Again, I'm sure Ina is going to talk about it later, so I won't say too much right now. And I'm going to take you right to Sydney, Melbourne and their coastal discovery. Now we're over here in the east of Victoria, and this drive takes in Wilson's Promontory National Park, one of the crown jewels of national parks in all of Australia. But we've also got 90 Mile Beach here, behind which sit the Gippsland Lakes, Australia's largest lake system of inland lakes and waterways. And new here is the Metang Hot Springs, where you've got geothermal pools overlooking the Southern Ocean, but also this incredible overwater glamping unit, glamping village, which is going to open probably in May this year. And then we're heading over to the Sydney-Melbourne Inland Discovery, where we find the Murray River or Bendigo, the UNESCO City of Gastronomy, where you can explore the Barmah National Park with over 500 gum trees. New here, the Siebel Yarrawonga Hotel, 4.5-star, overlooking Lake Mulwala, only 3 hours from Melbourne, and a short daytime drive from Echuca with the historic paddle steamers or the Rutherglen wine region. So here we have I'll leave you with some beautiful memories of the of what an adventure in Melbourne and Victoria looks like, and say thank you very much for listening. Here's our website and our social media sites for you to check out. Thanks again.